Well, hello there. The Gashouse gang coming your way on a Wednesday at noon. You know, I love getting together and doing these things, and I know our great listeners of KMOX do too. But Matt Pauley, I suspect we've had some new people coming in over the last week because of everything that's been happening with the Cardinals. It kind of blends it all together. Cardinals come into town, more media attention, and therefore people are discovering that there is a podcast / live stream every single day at noon talking Cardinals.
Yeah, here we are. We always make sure to talk Cardinals baseball. And certainly, we'd kind of been stuck, Tom, on the exact same talking points and narratives for the better part of the last, really since the winter meetings when the announcement was made that they intended to trade Nolan Arenado. And we spent the last month and a half, 2 months talking about that. And it was nice to get to winter warm-up and get to Cardinals Caravan and hear from some other folks and hear some different things because we can finally talk about some new stuff.
I agree with you. It's been an absolute blast to do it and to hear from everybody. And now let's get into it a little bit. I mean, the winter warm-up, you and I saw just about everything. I mean, Bernie, Kevin, you, me, we go on the Gashouse gang. We could have pulled several others in probably, but everybody's kind of busy, doing their own thing. But we were very observant, I would say, along the way. And there's so much that we still haven't covered.
Yeah.
So let's dive into it a little bit. I mean, what are your observations on the entire thing? What was your overall vibe when you came back? What did you sort of process?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is this overwhelming narrative that this is going to be a down season and they're not going to be competitive and things like that. That's not being bought by people in the organization. And I know they have to say that because they got to sell tickets, and you're not going to sit there on January 20th and say, well, yeah, we don't expect to be good this year. But even conversations I had with people that were off the record, that were, behind closed doors, there really is a belief internally that this team can exceed expectations. I don't think there's a belief that there's going to go on like some deep playoff run and be a legit World Series contender. But can this team with this young group of players overachieve, be in playoff contention, maybe steal a playoff spot, maybe steal the division, like things like that? I think that internally those beliefs do exist right now.
Yeah, and why do people feel that way now? Why is that starting? Because I was in Nashville yesterday. I just flew back this morning, and one of the first people that came up to me was a Cardinals fan. I'm going to leave names out of it because this is a private conversation, but there were there who I know who's a big Cardinals fan, and he said, "I'm starting to hear people think this team's going to be pretty good." So the message is getting out. Mm-hmm. I think the Cardinals like to manage expectations.
Yes.
Last year, they were considered to be a division leader, if not win it, and they did not, and that disappointed everybody, even though they finished with a winning record. I think we all know they were under expectation. They did not play like we thought they were going to play. Now, I feel like the opposite is here. The Cardinals were picked low, or people are kind of bummed out about it. Now, you're starting to get this message out there. So why do you think that is? Let's start with that.
Well, I think there's a belief in the talent on the roster. It's talent that has not completely performed. I don't mean to repeat the same thing over and over, Tom, but look, if Nolan Gorman and Jordan Walker take steps forward and are legit middle-of-the-order run producers, there's no reason that this team can't be a better offensive club than they were last year, where you just did not get much out of Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. And it's a big if, and there's a lot of pressure on somebody like Brant Brown to unlock those two individuals. But I think you look around and you look at the various players and what we view. This isn't just saying that player X is going to magically become a better player. This is saying Jordan Walker was previously considered one of the single best prospects in all of baseball. Can he reach that potential? Nolan Gorman has always been viewed as a guy who can go be a 30-plus home run guy. Can he reach that? And it wasn't you and me saying those things about Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman. It was Baseball America. It was MLB Pipeline. It was other teams. It was scouts across all of baseball. Like that is the path that these guys were on. And at some point that they came off that path. So can they get back on it? If they can, I think there's a lot of belief. And one area that I don't think there's as much question on, the starting rotation is solid. It's not great. Again, it's not a World Series championship starting rotation, but when you start with Sonny Gray and Eric Fetty, if Andre Palante can start to repeat what he did last year, that's a really good 1-2-3. And then we'll see what we get out of some combination of Miles Michaelis and Steven Matz and Michael McGreevy and whoever, and Quinn Matthews eventually. The relief pitching, even with Andrew Kittredge not around anymore, that was the single biggest strength of the team last year. And Ryan Helsley is back. Jojo Romero is back. Ryan Fernandez is ready to step into a bigger role. Matthew Liberator is ready to step into a bigger role. There's a lot of other young guys. I was on a caravan this past week with Chris Roycroft and Kyle Leahy, guys who got some big outs for the team. And they'll tell you, Kyle Leahy, you look at who he was 2 years ago and who he was this past season, completely different guy. And he got trusted in some of those high leverage spots at times this year. Chris Roycroft's going to go into his second year of being in the big leagues, and there's something that happened. So it's not a foregone conclusion. I'm not trying to be all, pixie dust and fairies and all that sort of stuff. But there is a reason to believe that this team can absolutely outperform the external expectations.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. This feels like Cardinals therapy right now, because I will say I don't want to make false claims, and I don't want to create some sort of promise out there to Cardinals fans that this team's going to be good. Mm-hmm. I need to see it for myself. This is the show me state, damn it. I want to see what the heck's going on with this team. So I'm with a lot of people on this, but the one thing I don't have is an expectation that they're just going to be terrible. Right. I think that there are people out there like, nope, they're going to be horrible and let's move on. Or the Cardinals are bad. Like there's only two things. They're either good or bad. No, actually, they're a baseball team that we need to see work. There's a poll today that they just posted. Drew Young, our producer, just posted it. Will Jordan Walker have a breakout year in 2025? 60% yes, 40% no, just to get things started. With all respect to Drew, I love Drew like he's my younger brother, but I don't know what breakout year means. So it's nice. It's a good poll. I think it'll be interesting, but what is a breakout year? Is a breakout year he stays healthy, he hits 20 bombs, he hits like 270, drives in 70, 75. Is that a breakout year for Jordan Walker? Is it like that he's not sent to AAA and he plays all year? Is that a breakout year? I just need to define what breakout year is.
Yeah, and for me, I think because I put the baseline on Jordan Walker, not what he did this past season. But, Tom, I put the baseline on what he did in the second half of the year in 2023, where it looked like that was going to be a takeoff point for 2024, and then it just never happened in 2024. So for it to be a breakout year for Walker, I think he has to exceed what he did in the second half of the season, which was pretty solid, what he did in the second half of the season going back to 2023. And I also want to be really clear on something, because I am putting a really positive spin on things. Is there a possibility that Nolan Gorman does not take a step forward, that he continues to strike out 1.5 times per game and hit under 200? Is there a chance that Jordan Walker continues to just drive the ball into the ground and swings at things that are low and away, and it looks like it looked this past year? Yeah, those things are still possible. And if those things happen, then it might turn into a pretty tough season. I am of the belief that I think those guys are going to have better years than that, though.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit. Let's go negative here for just a minute. So let's talk about why it would be a bad year. You just mentioned one. Well, you mentioned a couple, but Nolan Gorman is one for sure. Let's assume that Arenado gets traded, although as every day goes by, I'm starting to think that he won't be. But if he is, Nolan Gorman's your starting third baseman. I don't think anybody will argue that. So that means that he's going to get 500 plus at bats. And he struck out a ton last year, so he'll have to cut down on that. He may hit 25 home runs, but strike out a ton, and that hurts if he's not continuing a path. I mean, he went from here down. Now he's got to get back up. If he doesn't, that's one. Injuries, obviously, would be another. I'll put Walker in that Gorman category, that he shows no progress, that the bullpen, something happens to Helsley or the other parts of the bullpen, that the rotation, they stay with Michaelis, who ends up not being good, and he throws meatballs and gets bombed every single game. That Gray I can't imagine Gray not pitching well. So I'm gonna leave Sonny out of this. The Eric Fetty pitches pretty well, I would think. But the rest of the, it's like Palante maybe takes a step back for some reason or whatever. So the rotation doesn't do well. What other downer would there be? Mason Wynn has a bad sophomore slump. Mm-hmm. The outfield never gets going because Nootbaar gets hurt again. And I mean, are you catching my drift here? So yeah. Cardinals fans do, I think that way. Not all of them, but there are a good portion of them are saying, same manager, same players. You're just sort of rearranging them again. And so this team will not be good. Whereas last year, if I were to tell you right now that what Cardinals won how many last year? 82, 83? They win 82, 83, 84 games. Would you take that? I think that Cardinals fans probably some would and some would not. Some still think that they've got a shot and should be knocking on the playoff door. I think you would take a winning team if I upped that a little bit and said they're going to win 88 games, 89 games. Would you take that? Darn right you would. Because they'll be a wild card team or close to it. So they're not really that far off from last year's team. And in some ways, now I'm going back to the positive. I think they actually do have a shot to be better. And that's because as much as we loved Paul Goldschmidt, he's going to go down as a great Cardinal. He really held up, and so did Arenado, this offense. Plain and simple. If the Cardinals hit last year, Contreras stays healthy, let's say, they're a playoff team. I have no question in my mind. Yeah. As rough as that rotation was at times, they are a playoff team. Now, would they advance in the playoffs with that rotation? I don't know. But they probably make the playoffs if they hit, and they didn't hit. The defense was not bad. Base running, they could steal more bags. I think that the bullpen was dynamite, and Ollie managed it very well. So, I think you have to take a step back and say, realistically, this team could win anywhere from 70 to 90 games. Under 70, I don't think is possible, and over 90, I don't think is possible. So it's wide open. I mean, I think that you just have to, as a fan, say, I'll dip my toe in the water. I'm not going all in, but I'm going to have my eyes wide open, and I'm going to pay attention to this team. And if they don't do well, if you're a negative fan, you say, I told you so. And if you are a fan of the team, you're probably pleased. Because here's one more thing, Matt, and then I'll turn it back over to you, is I know I get it. I hear about it every day, and so do you. They're fed up with John Mozeliak. Mm-hmm. There aren't many people in his corner, if any. And so I think that a lot of people, not that they don't like the players because they loved the players, but they felt like if this team wins, then I have to endure John Mozeliak over and over and over again. Well, guess what? He's gone. I mean, he's going to be gone after this year. This is it's already clear. It's done. Chaim Bloom's the president of baseball operations. John Mozeliak actually has done a really nice job here of taking hits, taking the heat, and allowing Chaim to do his job and let this transition work. So give John a little credit for that. But I will say that, the success of the team is not going to extend John Mozeliak any longer. There will be a peaceful transition of power, and on it goes. I mean, just take a step back for a minute. Instead of having your blood boil about this team all the time, understand where they are right now. And yeah, I would have loved to have seen them go all in 22. They had the team that could have gone deep, but they ran into a red hot Phillies team that beat them.
And some bad luck in the final inning. Yeah.
This is the Gashouse Gang. It's KMOX. Matt Pauley, let's continue this Cardinals conversation. Let me hand it back over to you and other players, people that you heard from, talk to, that kind of shaped your feelings about this team. I think you and I are in the same boat here. We are neither rallying that the Cardinals are going to be great, nor are we painting doomsday here. We are looking as objectively as possible about this team.
I think we're leaving open the possibility that this team might really exceed expectations while also accepting the fact that they may not, and it could be a tough season this year. I will be, if this could be a team that stays in playoff contention for most of the year while all the really important work is going on behind the scenes, redeveloping player development, I think it turns into a pretty solid season. So I'd be happy with that. Also, one real quick thing, because I don't know if Drew can throw up the comment from Walt about Marmol's going to bench Gorman against every left-handed pitcher. Yeah, there it is. This is on Gorman to hit lefties. And in 2023, Tom, he started to hit lefties as the season went along. He ended up playing 50 games and getting 73 at-bats against lefties in 2023. That doesn't sound like a ton, especially when he got 333 at-bats against righties, but you're going to just face a lot more righties than lefties anyways. And if you really break that down and you go look at how many of those games against lefties came in the second half of the season, most of them did. So I would push back here on Walt a little bit here, because when Gorman hit lefties, he got the opportunity to be in the lineup against lefties in 2023. It's up to Gorman to do that. And even last year, he appeared in 97 games where he was facing off against a right-hand pitcher and 71 games against lefties, 260 at bats against righties, 105 against lefties. Again, so that's not even a third difference. So I would push back on that. I think Oliver Marmol is smart enough to know and to say that if Gorman's having success against lefties, get him in there. If he's not, don't.
That's a Major League Baseball. I mean, you got to learn how to hit them. And you might not be great against them, but you can't just be a non-factor if you want to be a great player. And if the Cardinals are going to have a starter, they have to have the ability somewhat to hit lefties, but you also have to play it smart in the meantime and have a weapon to go up against left-handed pitching. Nolan Gorman is working with Brant Brown, and that's why they hired Brant Brown. They had to make a change in their hitting approach and have somebody who could use the technology, the resources that were available to him. He was with the Seattle Mariners, but Albert Pujols, that's enough for me, thinks very highly of Brown, who they call Brownie, and the work that he did, that he will be able to get down there and do very well against or with Gorman, with Walker for that matter. But he's really concentrating on Gorman. And Garland, that's exactly what I was about to say. I mean, you got to learn to go the other way.
Sure.
I mean, you just do. I mean, if you're Nolan Arenado, even at this point in his career, he's a pull hitter. Got to learn how to go the other way, make contact, and they're continuing that approach and learning how to do those things. I do think that going into this season, there will be hefty pressure placed on Nolan Gorman, but that's okay. The guy was a high draft pick. He's now a major league veteran. He's not a baby. He's been in the game. So it's time. And, you look around baseball, who are the big stars today? They're all in their early mid-20s. Not all, but most that haven't gone through major injuries yet. One of them has, Acuna. But like if you're a top draft pick in this game, this is about the age that you start tearing it up, probably before this. So, the pathway hopefully will be there for Nolan Gorman to do such.
And if it's not, then and you're able to cut bait. This is one of those situations, Tom, where because there's been so much criticism towards the Cardinals about moving on from players and then those players turn into something more for other teams. We understand that, or the hanging on to guys too long and they end up selling low on players. If any of that stuff happens this, in the next year or so, I'm not going to criticize the Cardinals because it is more valuable to learn if Nolan Gorman can be an everyday third baseman who can hit in the middle of the order.
If a player, if another player goes off and becomes great somewhere else.
Yeah. If they end up trading Nolan Gorman a year from now and get almost nothing for him, if Gorman leaves the organization and then he does finally start to exceed expectations, if those things happen right now, I'm giving them a pass because you give them the opportunity this year, you figure out what you have and whatever the consequences of that are, that's what it is. It doesn't bother me.
Yeah. And, Gorman, from all I hear, is, and we've been around him, is a good guy. He's a tough dude. He's a great competitor. He's learned. I think one great sign was that Gorman learned how to play second base. Gorman's a third baseman, but he actually became a pretty darn good second baseman. A lot of people sort of rolled their eyes like, oh, look at this. They're going to put Nolan Gorman at second base. He actually turned out to be, he's not Tommy Herr, but he turned out to be a pretty good one. So yeah, I think he's around still for a reason. One, they, invested in him, but two, they like him as a team player, and he is a great competitor and exactly the type of person that they want. He also has a ferocious home run swing, and when he starts to hit them, they go forever. So perhaps Brant Brown can work with him. And then, looking at Jordan Walker, so trying to read into Walker and how he sounded, he's always positive. I mean, of course, I'm sure there were some times where he was down. Joe Pott interviewed him and kind of tapped into the, what was it like going down to the minors? And I think, Jordan asked Joe right back, like, what do you mean by that? And he said, how do you deal with it, basically? And he said, I think, I can't remember the exact answer, but it was very mature, wise, like he is, answered like, I just have to. I mean, I have to deal with it. This is where I am. And it's not easy, but you kind of push through it. And now you can just tell that he enjoys the fact that the Cardinals are believing in him and they're going to give him the opportunity. I still hang on this Dylan Carlson thing, where Carlson, I thought, was a great prospect. He was. The Cardinals loved him. He did not end up doing a whole lot based on expectation. He did, however, at the end of spring training, look great. He's one of the best performers in Jupiter. He gets hurt in Mesa, and then everything goes sideways again. And then I hang on this when he was interviewed by Trisha Whitaker after a walk-off for the Rays on Rays TV, and he said something along the lines of, I just really appreciate a team that will put their trust in me that I can get the job done. I was like, ooh, So, that's a big thing. You've got to, if you're the Cardinals, you've got to grab these guys, and say, I'm with you. We are going to live and die with you. We're riding this out. So let's go. You're our guy. And they're going to try to do that now with Gorman and Walker. They're going to let the guys succeed and fail.
And you think about the storyline of Jordan Walker, and Tom, he would have every reason to be frustrated and to also have a lack of trust in the organization. And when he goes on that great hitting streak to begin his career, and then that ends, and the next thing they do is they bench him because they want to help him with his swing, but they keep him on the big league roster not playing, and then they send him to AAA. And then the next year, the whole thing happened where they brought him up, but they weren't playing him. And, is there any value in that? And he ends up going back down. It's been a little bit odd in the way that he has been handled. And now you listen to him talk. He was giddy. He was downright giddy about the work that they were doing on his swing. In many ways, they went back to what he's always done, and then they were trying to build upon that. So as opposed to changing the swing, they reestablish the base and then they tweak it from there, which I'm not a coach, but that seems like a good way to go about it. That way you're able to kind of take baby steps in the things that you're moving. And by the way, Tom, he was jacked. Like, either he was wearing a size small shirt, which he wasn't, or he has done he was already a big dude and he already was jacked, but this guy looked absolutely huge. So it's obvious he's been, and he's a young guy as well. So he's going to continue to grow up and develop into the body. Like there's a lot of reasons to be really excited about what might happen here.
Yeah. I mean, the dude's got a house in Jupiter, Florida. He grills burgers and makes healthy food and plays video games. And then he goes over to the complex and hits and lifts and whatever. I mean, what a great life. And I think that he's enjoying that. You can tell he does like that, and they allow him to see. You can't send one of your top guys down to AAA after getting such a long look at the major leagues. That isn't going to happen anymore. He's not going back. He's going to be here. He's the right fielder. And there's the other thing too, is that they put him in right field and just try to figure it out. And I know he worked with people and Willie McGee and everybody, but that's a process too. I mean, he's a third baseman. I mean, just trying to play right field in the big leagues. Made some nice plays, but he also misplayed some. And, he's a work in progress out there too. So he's got two things going on at once. He's trying to learn how to play defense and hit.
And that's where the Cardinals not having a beefed up instructional staff really hurt, because we saw him when he was working with Willie McGee every single day on the big league roster. He was getting better and better and better from a defensive standpoint in the outfield. And then he goes to Memphis and he comes back, and Tom bluntly, he didn't look like the same guy in the outfield. And this is where now, with the Cardinals having more roving coaches and outfield coaches, if that sort of situation were to play itself out again, not with Walker because he's not going to be going down, but if that type of situation does play itself out again, you can go camp out a coordinator with that player where they're working on outfield play on an everyday basis.
The Gashouse Gang on KMOX is sponsored by Saliga Heating and Cooling with Matt Pauley. I'm Tom Ackerman. I hope that Jordan Walker is standing at a podium someday laughing about the days that he was struggling at the plate and had to go back to AAA. I don't know where that podium is going to be. Maybe it'll be at the Baseball Writers Dinner. Maybe it'll be at the Jack Buck Awards. I think it'd be thinking really big that it would be in Cooperstown or something like that. But hey, I mean, he's a kid who's learning how to play the game, grown into a man now, and all you can ask is that he has a nice major league career and wins a championship or two with the St. Louis Cardinals. And, speaking of Cooperstown, this just happened. We get all the big names up there, and that's a pretty good list right there. I mean, I could go to battle with Ichiro, CC Sabathia, and Billy Wagner. I mean, that is really strong, not to mention Dick Allen and Dave Parker. But there are some names that were left out as well. Let me get your initial thoughts, though, on Ichiro and this whole thing about being a unanimous position player. We still haven't had one. Mariano Rivera is the only unanimous player. It doesn't bother me as much as it used to. Does it bother you?
It bothers me in the sense that I'd like to know why the one person who didn't vote for him, because I have to think that it's a fairly silly reason. I don't. He's not a lesser of a Hall of Famer because he didn't become unanimous. Like, that doesn't bother me at all. That part, he's a Hall of Famer, and we knew he was going to be a Hall of Famer. And from that side of it, I don't care if he got 75% of the vote or 99.9% of the vote. That doesn't bother me. But when you do have individuals who serve as the gatekeeper of Cooperstown and of the Baseball Hall of Fame, I am curious, Tom, why in the world somebody wouldn't vote for him. Do they not vote for him because they don't believe that anybody should be a unanimous first-time Hall of Famer or unanimous Hall of Famer anyway? Like, if that's their belief, I think that's kind of silly, and that bothers me. So I think there's one part of it that bothers me because there's somebody who made a silly decision, but it doesn't actually, I don't think less of the situation that Ichiro is a unanimous guy.
What an amazing player. One of the greatest hitters we have ever seen. I talk all the time about Albert Pujols being the greatest hitter I've ever seen. Ichiro's right there. I mean, right there. I'd have to use the qualifier that Pujols is the greatest right-handed hitter of his generation, but boy, Ichiro's something special. I heard all those stories too about him. I wish I had covered him on a daily basis in Seattle about him. If he wanted to, he could hit 50 home runs.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that stuff. Where he was out there just cranking home runs in batting practice. So those three got in. I'm looking at the percentages. Who did not get 75% of the vote? Carlos Beltran, 70.3. And that is not because he struck out looking in 2006 on a curveball from Adam Wainwright. It's because of his involvement with the Houston Astros scandal. Right. That's why.
He'll get in next year.
Yeah. Andrew Jones, 66.2. He should be in.
Okay, and let me pause you real quick.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we have the Jim Edmonds conversation, because when you compare those two resumes, I agree he is a Hall of Famer, but the fact that Edmonds came off the ballot when basically he's got the same resume, like it is a crime that Jim Edmonds is not still on the ballot.
Yeah, I don't get it. I was just about to get into that as well. I don't understand that. What do they have against Jim Edmonds? All he did was hit big home runs in big moments, make big catches, win Gold Gloves, played for champions. It's odd.
Yeah, 100%.
Going down the list. So then there's a big drop. So Chase Utley at 39.8%. Man, he was tough to play against. Alex Rodriguez, 37.1. Manny Ramirez, 34.3. Andy Pettit, 27.9. So we know where we're going there. The connection to PEDs. Will we ever have a steroid / PED suspect or user admitted to the Hall of Fame, elected to the Hall of Fame?
I don't know.
I think someday, yes, but it's going to be a while. It'll be the generation that didn't see it.
Well, here's and at that point, it's no longer the baseball writers because they'll be off the ballot by that point. So it's going to be some committee. And I push that to the side. Like I know that's not the exact question that you asked, but do the baseball writers ever elect a steroid guy to the Hall of Fame? And I think the answer to that is no.
I think the answer to that is no as well.
Yeah.
And I think there will be the next generation will stir it up and maybe influence that voting committee. The generation behind us is going to look and say, what, are you kidding me? Barry Bonds is the all-time home run leader and he's not in the Hall of Fame. What in the world? I got to do some research. What happened back then? And of course, we're all going to be grandpas and we're going to say he cheated. And they're going to say it's hard to hit a baseball. And don't you watch baseball, Grandpa? I mean, this guy hit more home runs than anybody else. And then we're all going to get into an argument again. But I do think that's what's going to happen. I think there will be a new wave of support for them. Maybe even McGuire, Sosa, and they all get lumped into this discussion. But for right now, that's kind of where they are. Let's go back to Beltran. So you think Beltran can get there? He's close.
Yeah, he's less than 20 votes away. And historically, when you're that close, you get in the next year. So hopefully we are still doing the Gashouse gang, Tom, on January 22nd of 2026. I will be beyond shocked if he is not in at this time next year.
The Gashouse Gang is on KMOX Air. It's on KMOX.com. It's on Apple Podcasts. It's everywhere. Right now, you're watching it somewhere, YouTube, Facebook, perhaps on X. With Matt Pauley, I'm Tom Ackerman. It's always great to be with you. And we have lots of time for our next discussion, which is football. Okay, so specifically college football. I want to continue what we talked about yesterday, if you don't mind. Where I said that the Big Ten is the next SEC. I did not get any pushback on that whatsoever, and I'm going to double down on it. The Big Ten is going to be better next year than it was the last 2 years. This is college football in the NIL era, folks. No longer will the SEC be the dominant conference. If I am wrong on that, then I will eat my words. But the Big Ten can now play in the big recruiting pool because not everybody is going to flock to Alabama. They're going to go where the money is. And guess what? Big Ten teams have money and lots of it. They have palm trees too out in California. Wait till USC and UCLA start getting involved in the NIL pool. They do it right and they hit the portal hard and they start to show off their campuses and what they can do out there. Oregon's already a power. So those are and Washington won't be dead for long. They're going to come back. They were in the national championship just last season. Not to mention Ohio State, the national champion, Michigan, Illinois is on the rise. Indiana had a very, very solid year. A college football playoff team. Nebraska's got tons of resources and high-powered boosters that want to get that thing back after they got smoked by my Hoosiers 56-7. I promise you, they don't want that to ever happen again. They must have sat there on the flight saying, did we just get beat by Indiana by 49 points? Don't ever let that happen again, please. This Big Ten is absolutely going to be around, and they are the conference in college football right now, Matt Pauley.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I don't totally disagree, but I still – okay, so let's take – Michigan and Ohio State out of the discussion, and let's take Alabama and Georgia out of the discussion. Those four teams are always going to be teams that are contending for a national title. So then you get to the next group of teams in each league, and we can include your Indiana Hoosiers in that group. would I rather be a team that's sitting in the SEC, or would I rather be a team that's sitting in the Big Ten when it comes to trying to lift myself up to not just getting into the college football playoff, but being a team that has a legitimate run to inside of them to be a national title team? And I would rather be Ole Miss than Indiana or Nebraska or whoever else. Maybe we can even put Oregon back up in that group with Michigan and Ohio State. They've got a pretty solid track record in what they've done in recent years. But I'm going to have to see this thing play out a little bit more. And this is not any disrespect towards the Big Ten. Obviously, I think what we've learned is NIL really has leveled out the playing field, where I think a lot of these SEC teams behind closed doors already had NIL, and now all of a sudden it's a more legal thing to do. So they are, competing in a different way with other teams. But with all due respect to all these programs in the Big Ten, I still think the fandom, I still think the fervor, I think the expectations across most teams in the SEC is going to end up putting them in a better spot than a lot of these Big Ten teams. I'm willing to be wrong on this one, but that's just where I'm saying.
I love the SEC football experience. I mean, they've got warmer weather, and you got the players have great campuses, pretty girls, warm weather, high paid coaches. Guess what? That's about to change. They already have high paid coaches in the Big Ten, but that's where the money is, my friend. And they will start to go to those schools as well. Penn State is going to be a beast for a long, long time. They're about to refurbish that unbelievable stadium, and it'll be even better. The money will be flowing. Who did I leave out? Iowa and Wisconsin are always going to be 8-win teams, and sometimes they're going to win 9, 10, and maybe 11. I'm curious why Minnesota can never be good. They're in a huge market, and I think that they have a good backing as well. Let me see if there's another one. Michigan State is one that's taken a beating over a long period of time, but can they get themselves back on track? Barry Odom's going to give it a shot at Purdue. Right now, they're really struggling, but I think they'll improve. But it really comes down to the feeling about the last two national champions. They're always going to push, and they're going to be the two teams, Ohio State and Michigan, that everybody wants to be. Penn State's the closest to being a power consistently in the country. So it's going to be, I think, a lot of fun. Now, Big Ten basketball is a different story. They right now are taking an absolute beating in comparison to the SEC. The SEC has 7 ranked teams right now, including Missouri, who just lost to Texas. But let's remember, actually, no, let me see if that's right. That's football. 7 SEC has 7 ranked teams in football, and basketball they have
got a bunch in the top 10.
They've got a ton, 4, 8, 9. So they have 9 ranked teams, and as you mentioned, a number of those in the top 10, and Missouri at 22 as well, 22 in football and basketball. But they lost to Texas, which is another example that the SEC basketball conference can't be messed with right now. You cannot sleep any day, especially when you go down to Texas. I mean, you didn't expect them to win, did you? But Missouri's good. Missouri's good. They didn't suddenly become, a Final Four team because they beat Kansas and they, went to Florida and won.
I thought they had a shot last night. Texas was 1-4 in SEC games going into last night. It hadn't been impressive. So I think if Missouri puts a good performance on the floor last night, they have a really good chance of winning. But my goodness, they were terrible offensively. They were terrible. The rebounding is the thing. Second chance points absolutely kill them. Anytime you lose a game because of second chance points, Tom, that's a game you could have won.
Yeah, I think that's true. SLU tonight, SLU against LaSalle. It's going to be a fun night. I'll be there. Looking forward to that one on FanDuel Sports Network Midwest. We're going to have a good time with it. The Billikens are 4-1 in the A10, but they can't sleep on anybody in the league. They can lose anytime. Anybody can win. That league is very, very tight. By the way, a little shout out to the Missouri Valley Conference. Belmont Bradley put it on them last night. That valley is tight too. They're really, really deep. Very, very good. You've got a little bit of sports open line tonight before the Billikens, Matthew.
Yeah, about 45 minutes. We'll get into a lot of what we've talked about today, and then we'll hand things off to Rammer and Earl, and we'll hopefully hear a Billikens win tonight.
Buddy, the time goes way too fast on these
does.
Gashouse gangs. Already 40 minutes in. We appreciate you all very much. Thank you for being with us. You can catch us on any of your social media channels, podcast locations, and of course on KMOX, the Gashouse Gang.